Hey guys, PIEGUYRULZ here with some first impressions for the new Nick show, Bunsen is a Beast. Now, the show premieres later on in February, but they had a sneak preview on Nick.com of the second episode, which includes two segments. I don't know why they didn't include the first episode, but maybe it's just because the second episode does a better job at introducing Bunsen. I'm not quite sure because obviously I have no idea what the first episode is actually like yet. Of course, I have to give the warning that this is just a first impressions video, and a lot of the stuff I'm saying are just going to be guesses for what the show is going to be like from the information I've gotten from these two segments. I don't know anything for certain, and of course, any show that's early in its first season is very subject to change. So don't take a lot of what I'm about to say as permanent fact that's going to be true forever. It's just what I got from watching these two episodes. So first off, I actually looked up to see who played Bunsen and Mikey, his human friend, because I thought both of their voices kind of sounded familiar. As it turns out, they've both had a lot of minor parts and a lot of things that I've never heard of, but Jeremy Rowley, the guy who plays Bunsen, was in a ton of Dan Schneider shows. His most prominent role being Lubert, but he was also somewhere in the Game Shakers episode Poison Pie. As for the actor who plays Mikey, he too was in a lot of things I'd never heard of, and the only thing I could recognize him from was the toddler from Henry Danger. So if nothing else, this role is a big step up for the poor guy. So the only thing I knew about this show really going in was that it was made by Butch Hartman. They announced it on a Nickelodeon upfront a while ago. But even if I didn't know that fact before watching, it's very obvious that this is a Butch Hartman show. You can tell because it uses a lot of the same sound effects that Tough Puppy, Danny Phantom, and the Fairly OddParents, for the past 15 years, have been using. And quite frankly, I'm kind of sick of them. The show definitely downplays it a little bit, but all of those things that I've gotten very used to from the Fairly OddParents are still there. And really, I think this is the biggest hurdle that the show has to overcome, proving to people that it's not just the Fairly OddParents again. Because while yes, Butch has had other shows, Danny Phantom had the benefit of being an action comedy, and Tough Puppy had the whole spy genre plus the fact that it was about anthropomorphic animals to differentiate it from his other shows. This one so far has given me a very big Fairly OddParents vibe and doesn't really seem to do that much original or interesting, at least in the basic premise alone. Mikey seems like an average, boring kid who doesn't have much going on in his life until he meets Bunsen, this magical creature that can do all sorts of fantastical and weird things and has all these quirks about him. The antagonist of the series is a teen girl named Amanda who is constantly trying to bust Bunsen, to run him out of town or ban him from school or expose him to the world or something. It's not entirely explained. Basically, imagine if Crocker was Vicky. So by this point, you're definitely starting to see why it does have more than a few things in common with the Fairly OddParents. And I'm not saying this as it's a ripoff or that it's the same show or anything, but when a well-known creator has had a show on the air for 15 years, you kinda hope that the next thing they do is going to be different in a big way and not just more of the same. And unfortunately, that's the vibe that I get from this. And it even feels like it has a lot in common with other shows. Amanda's obsession with busting almost seems very Candace-esque from Phineas and Ferb. And the whole episode Hide and Go Freak where we get to see Bunsen's house very much reminded me of Foster's. Again, nothing bad enough or seemingly like it's blatantly stealing or anything. It just seems to have this stuff in common, and that's not really what I want to see out of a new show, especially one from Butch Hartman. But on the upside, the show does have a lot of the good parts of Fairly OddParents that a lot of people really liked. It is a very goofy, cartoony, weird show, the kind that you don't necessarily see too much these days. And as far as the humor goes, I'm not gonna say that it's brilliant, but there were jokes that I laughed at. And although I feel like it is a little bit in your face and a little bit maybe trying too hard to be wacky and quirky, there isn't really much that I could say is bad or wrong with the show. Just that it didn't leave that much of an impression on me yet, which is okay, because obviously early in the first season there's still plenty of time for the show to really come into its own. All I'm saying is that from the initial premise alone and everything I saw in Hide and Go Freak and Bunsen Screams for Ice Cream, it does look like it's going to be more of the same. And this is really obvious if you compare it to the last sneak peek that I looked at, Milo Murphy's Law. That show has a very clear, definable, interesting, and unusual premise, and even though, who knows, the show could be really good or really bad, the premise alone won't decide that, but it does offer something that is going to be, at the very least, different. You can see the similarities to Phineas and Ferb, but you can also see that they are making a lot of effort to differentiate themselves from their past project in a big way that I'm just not seeing here at all. There are certainly worse complaints to have about a show, but my guess is that it will end up getting the tough puppy treatment. Maybe get 2 or 3 seasons and then kind of vanish pretty quickly. Even though the company is very quick to ditch shows that don't get them very high ratings off the bat, Nickelodeon does seem to have some sort of affinity for Butch Hartman, especially with the Fairly OddParents finally seeming to come to an end, so maybe his name alone can get the show the proper promotion, development, and time it needs to possibly shine. It's not the kind of show that I would recommend you go out and watch the sneak peek right now, but if it's on and you're somewhat interested, yeah, check it out. There's definitely a lot worse on Nickelodeon these days. I hope you enjoyed this little first impressions, and if you would like to see more in-depth coverage of the show as it goes on, please let me know in the comment section below. With that, PIEGUYRULZ,